Welcome to your weekly airplane news update. This is the week of July 25th, 2022. This week we have 4 stories. The first one, not a big fan. We have a congressional bill that is trying to raise the pilot age for retirement for airline pilots. Not a big fan. We'll talk about a national 100 low-lead ban that's possibly around the corner. There was a plane that crashed near a lifeguard training session, which is just a very lucky person right there. And then lastly, we'll talk about CAE and Piper that are trying to develop an electric conversion kit for the Piper Archer. So let's get to it. All right, and before we get with the first story, there's actually a big story that broke, and we need to really talk about this, which is Jetblue is going to be buying Spirit after all. As you know, and as we've been reporting, there was a battle between Frontier and Jetblue to be able to purchase Spirit. And last night, in a twist of things, Frontier backed down and said they weren't going to do it. And then this morning when we woke up, we realized that Jetblue said they were going to finally be buying Spirit. So this is a $3.8 billion deal. After a month-long battle between the two. The merger will create the 5th largest airline in the country, which is interesting when you think about JetBlue, Spirit, and even Frontier, quite frankly. At the level where they are, this is becoming a really, really large airline. The deal must be approved by the regulator, which was one of the point of contention for a while between JetBlue and Spirit, because Spirit said there is no way the regulators are going to make this happen. So eventually, I guess they caved out. But this is going to be the largest deal since Alaska Airlines beat out JetBlue to buy Virgin America. The quote from the JetBlue CEO was, "We have 2 priorities. One is to get this deal closed and get the airlines integrated and build a bigger JetBlue." And that's Robin Hayes, who's the CEO of JetBlue. And he said, secondly, to run a reliable operation in the meantime. So we wish them the best. I think this is going to be an interesting thing to follow over time and see what happens with Spirit, quite frankly, and see if the service changes over time. The first story this week is a congressional bill that is trying to raise the retirement age of airline pilots from 65 to 67. And quite frankly, not a big fan. This is the same shenanigans that they pulled out in 2007 when they raised the retirement age from 60 to 65, when they started to realize that, well, there was a pilot shortage around the corner. And all it did, quite frankly, is it kicked the can 5 years down the line, and it really didn't accomplish anything. 5 years later, we had the same issues in 2012, and then now we're in 2022, 10 years later, and they're trying to do the same thing again. Now, granted, it's only a 2-year raise, which, quite frankly, I don't think would solve anything in terms of the issues. ALPA made a pretty strong statement. Now, I don't always agree with ALPA, but ALPA is the Airline Pilot Association, and they mentioned that this would actually not accomplish anything, and all it's doing is attempted to distract the conversation from the real issue, which they believe is the failure of airlines to deliver a key goal of the multi-billion-dollar relief plan that Congress had provided them during the pandemic in order to, well, go back to air service after the pandemic stopped and the travel resumed. So I kind of have to agree with this. I still believe there is an airline shortage. I know ALPA doesn't, but we have other issues, and quite frankly, raising the age by 2 years isn't going to make any difference. Airlines need to start investing in training to get people interested in actually becoming pilots, and as of the moment, only a few have done this, and I think they all failed in trying to get the next generation involved in becoming airline pilots. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Let's talk about the next thing, which is a national 100 low-lead ban that potentially could be around the corner. A Congressional committee is going to hold a hearing called the Toxic Air, How Leaded Aviation Fuel is Poisoning America's Children, which is a pretty loaded title right there. The committee is looking to ban 100 low lead, which this has been attempted quite a bit in the past. It's expected that the EPA will issue a finding on the leaded avgas next year, so we'll keep you posted when that happens. Next story. This is probably the luckiest pilot this week, possibly of the month. An airplane crashed in Huntington Beach in California this week next to a lifeguard competition. Now, how lucky do you have to be to actually turn the competition into a real rescue right away? It happened between 2 events, and then all the veteran lifeguards quickly swam and to the wreck and actually rescued the pilot from the water. He made it out, went to the hospital with only bumps and bruises, but otherwise otherwise unharmed. So lucky you, the video you can see actually was pretty quick. Somebody just saw it happen and then it quickly dropped the camera after it happened. Okay, the last one is Piper and CAE are working on a kit, a conversion kit, that's going to make a PA-28181, which is the Piper Archer, into an electric aircraft. Now, I've talked about this before. I do believe that the electric technology is the future of aviation, especially for flight training. If we can get the cost of flight training down, I do believe that this is a first step in the pilot shortage that we talked about in the first story. The development of the technology is a first for CAE. Now, CAE is one of the biggest customer of Piper, if not the biggest customer of Piper in terms of flight training. And they're working in partnership with the government of Canada and the government of Quebec in order to make this happen. So they're investing some R&D money into making this happen. So we'll have more information when there's more. I did fly quite a bit actually in the Piper Archer. We had them in Florida at FIT where I used to work and the school I used to manage. So, all right. That's all I have for you this week. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.